Just one more set. Emma, stop being so weak, Marcus barked, hovering over me as I struggled with the weighted bar. My arms trembled, and shooting pain raced down my spine. I can't, I gasped. Something feels wrong. Nothing's wrong except your attitude, he snapped, adding another plate to the bar. You wanted my help getting fit. Now do I say? I'm the certified trainer here. My name is Emma Mitchell, and at 25, I trusted my older brother Marcus to help me get in shape. He'd recently gotten his personal training certification and insisted on training me for free, claiming it would help build his portfolio. Our parents were thrilled, proud that their successful son was helping his unmotivated sister. If only they knew what was really happening in these sessions. Marcus had always been the family golden child. At 28, he had the perfect physique, the certification, and our parents' unwavering support. When I mentioned wanting to get healthier, they immediately volunteered him as my trainer. You're lucky, Mom said. He usually charges $200 per session. The pain started 3 weeks into our training. Small twinges at first, easily dismissed as normal workout soreness. But then it got worse. The exercises Marcus chose seemed increasingly aggressive, far from the beginner routines I'd researched online. The form feels wrong, I said one day, struggling with a complex lift. Maybe we should check. I'm the expert here. He cut me off, his voice sharp. You think you know better than someone with certification? This is why you've never succeeded at anything, Emma. You always quit when it gets hard. His words stung, but not as much as the searing pain that shot through my lower back as he forced me to continue. That night, I could barely walk. Mom found me crying in my room, clutching my back. Oh, stop being dramatic, she sighed, rolling her eyes. Marcus says you're just resisting the process. No pain, no gain, right? But this wasn't normal pain. Every session got worse, and Marcus got more aggressive. He'd invite his gym friends to watch, making comments about how his sister was finally getting serious, while forcing me through routines that left me gasping and dizzy. See, he'd say to them, this is why you need a proper trainer. Look how weak her form was before I started helping her. They'd laugh, and I'd fight back tears, trying to ignore the increasing numbness in my legs. Our parents watched these sessions with pride, praising Marcus's dedication to helping his sister. Nobody seemed to notice or care about my deteriorating condition. The breaking point came during what would be our final session. Marcus had me attempting a deadlift with weight that I knew was far too heavy. I really can't, I protested, feeling my back spasm. Marcus, please. Always with the excuses, he shouted, his face red with anger. Mom and Dad were right, you're just lazy. Looking for attention. Well, guess what? You're doing this lift or I'm telling everyone you quit. Again. I tried. God help me, I tried. The bar hadn't even left the ground when I felt something snap. The pain was explosive, radiating through my entire body. My legs gave out, and I crumpled to the floor, unable to move. Marcus stood over me, disgust clear on his face. Get up, Emma. Stop being so dramatic. But I couldn't get up. The numbness in my legs had turned complete, and panic started setting in. I can't feel my legs, I whispered, terror creeping into my voice. Marcus, I really can't feel my legs. He called our parents instead of an ambulance. They arrived to find me still on the floor, tears streaming down my face. She's just trying to get out of training, Marcus told them, his voice full of fake concern. You know how she gets. Mom knelt beside me, frustration clear in her expression. Emma, honey, you're embarrassing your brother in front of his clients. He's trying to help you. My legs, I managed to say through the pain. I can't feel my legs. Dad stepped forward, his voice stern. That's enough. Marcus is a certified professional. If he says you're fine, you're fine. Now get up. But I couldn't. For the first time in my life, I physically couldn't follow their orders. The pain was blinding, and the numbness was spreading. Finally, despite their protests, someone called an ambulance. The EMTs didn't dismiss my pain. They didn't tell me I was being dramatic. They took one look at my condition and moved with urgent efficiency, carefully immobilizing my spine before loading me into the ambulance. As they wheeled me out, I heard Marcus telling them about my history of exaggeration and how I was always looking for attention. The last thing I saw before the ambulance doors closed was my family's faces, not concerned, but annoyed at the scene I'd caused. They had no idea that the MRI would soon show exactly what Marcus's expert training had done to my spine. No idea that their golden child certification wasn't worth the paper it was printed on. No idea that their daughter's life was about to change forever. And Marcus? He had no idea that his portfolio building was about to turn into something much more serious. The emergency room was a blur of activity. Doctors rushed around, ordering tests and asking questions about the training sessions. When I mentioned Marcus's certification, they exchanged glances I couldn't quite read. "Your brother's been training you for how long?" the neurologist asked, reviewing my intake forms. 3 months. I managed through gritted teeth. He's certified. "Through which organization?" she interrupted, looking up sharply. Before I could answer, my family burst into the ER. Marcus immediately took control, pulling out a card from his wallet. "I'm her trainer, here's my certification." Everything was done properly. The neurologist took one look at the card and her expression hardened. "This isn't a recognized certification. Where exactly did you receive your training?" Marcus's face flushed. "Online. But I have dozens of successful clients." "Online?" The doctor cut him off. "Did you complete any in-person practical training? Any anatomy courses? Injury prevention certification?" The silence that followed was deafening. My parents, who had been standing proudly behind Marcus, suddenly looked uncertain. "The MRI results are ready," a nurse announced, saving Marcus from having to answer. The neurologist excused herself, leaving my family in uncomfortable silence. 20 minutes later, she returned with several scans. The images she put up on the light box made even my mother gasp. "These show severe herniation in multiple discs," the doctor explained, pointing to dark areas on the scan. "The compression on your spinal cord is significant. This kind of damage doesn't happen overnight. These injuries have been accumulating for weeks, possibly months." My father stepped forward, his voice shaking slightly, but Marcus said, "Mr. Mitchell," the neurologist interrupted firmly, "your daughter needs immediate surgery. The damage your son's training has caused could have left her permanently paralyzed. As it is, she'll need extensive rehabilitation." The room spun as I processed her words. Surgery, rehabilitation. All because I trusted my brother, because I'd listened when everyone told me to push through the pain. "I want to file a report," I said quietly, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. "About the false certification." "Emma," my mother exclaimed, "he's your brother. He was trying to help." The neurologist stepped between us. "Mrs. Mitchell, your son's actions constitute gross negligence. He misrepresented his qualifications and caused serious bodily harm. This isn't about family loyalty anymore." Marcus, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly found his voice. "You can't prove anything." She signed a waiver. The doctor's eyes narrowed. "A waiver? May I see it?" Marcus fumbled with his phone, pulling up a document. The neurologist took one look and handed it back. "This generic online waiver doesn't cover fraudulent credentials or willful negligence. In fact, it's dated after some of your sister's injuries already occurred." My parents' perfect image of their son was crumbling before their eyes. Dad sank into a chair, while Mom kept shaking her head in denial. "We need to prep you for surgery," the nurse said gently, touching my arm. "Your family can wait outside." As they wheeled me toward the operating room, I heard Marcus arguing with our parents in the hallway. "She's just jealous of my success. She's trying to ruin me." The last thing I saw before the anesthesia took hold was the neurologist speaking quietly with a hospital administrator, my brother's fake certification card in her hand. When I woke up hours later, my room was quiet except for the steady beep of monitors. A thick bandage wrapped around my lower back, and I still couldn't feel my legs properly, but the searing pain was finally dulled. A young police officer sat beside my bed, notebook in hand. "Ms. Mitchell, when you're ready, we'd like to take your statement about the fraudulent certification and resulting injuries." I nodded slowly, the fog of anesthesia still heavy in my mind. "Where's my family?" "Your parents are speaking with hospital administration," she said carefully. "Your brother, he left after being served with preliminary papers regarding his unauthorized practice and fraudulent credentials." Of course he had. Marcus had always run when things got tough, leaving others to deal with the consequences. But this time would be different. "I'm ready to make my statement," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. I want to make sure he never does this to anyone else." The officer nodded, pen poised over her notebook. As I began recounting everything, the escalating exercises, the ignored protests, the warning signs everyone dismissed, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about my injury anymore. It was about standing up to years of manipulation and negligence masked as tough love. My phone lit up with a text from Marcus. "Hope you're happy. You've ruined everything." I handed the phone to the officer without responding. Let him think he was the victim. The MRI didn't lie, and neither would I. The hard truth was about to come out, whether my family was ready for it or not. 6 months after the surgery, I sat in my physical therapist's office, watching a video of myself taking my first unassisted steps. It wasn't pretty, my movements were shaky, and I needed parallel bars for support. But it was progress. "You're doing incredibly well, Emma," Dr. Santos said, smiling. "Most patients with your level of injury take much longer to reach this stage." The journey hadn't been easy. 3 surgeries, countless therapy sessions, and a complete overhaul of my life. But I was walking, something the initial prognosis hadn't guaranteed. My phone buzzed with another message from Mom. "Marcus's hearing is tomorrow. Please reconsider testifying. He's suffering enough." I turned the phone face down. My brother's suffering? He'd been running an illegal training business out of local gyms, using a fake certification he'd bought online. The investigation had uncovered 3 other clients with serious injuries, though none as severe as mine. My parents still couldn't accept reality. They'd paid for Marcus's lawyer, sold their vacation home to cover his mounting legal fees, and constantly pressured me to drop the charges. "He's your brother," they'd plead. "Family forgives." But this wasn't about forgiveness. It was about accountability. The next morning, I walked into the courthouse using just a cane, another small victory. Marcus sat at the defendant's table, wearing a suit that was supposed to make him look responsible. Our parents sat behind him, but my chair on the prosecution side remained empty. I'd chosen to sit with the other victims. When I took the stand, I spoke clearly and calmly, describing every ignored warning sign, every dismissed complaint, every moment Marcus chose his ego over my safety. I showed the court my medical records, the MRI images, the documented progression of spinal damage. "And did your brother acknowledge any issues with your training?" the prosecutor asked. "No," I replied, meeting Marcus's eyes. He said I was being dramatic, that I was weak, even when I couldn't feel my legs. He told our parents I was faking it. Marcus looked away first. Our mother was crying silently in the gallery, but I kept going. The truth needed to be heard. The judge's verdict was unequivocal. Marcus was banned from working in any fitness-related industry, ordered to pay restitution to all his victims, and sentenced to 18 months in prison for fraudulent practice resulting in bodily harm. "You've destroyed our family," Mom sobbed as they led Marcus away. "How could you do this to your own brother?" "No, Mom," I said quietly. "He destroyed himself. I just refused to let him destroy me too." 1 year later, I stood in front of a room full of physical therapy students at the local university. My story had become a cautionary tale about unlicensed trainers and ignored red flags. The damage wasn't just physical, I told them, walking slowly across the stage. It was the betrayal of trust, the dismissal of pain, the gaslighting that made me doubt my own body's warnings. That's why proper certification and training matter. That's why listening to your clients matters. After my speech, a young woman approached me. "My brother's been training people from our garage," she said hesitantly. "He says certifications are just paper." I gave her my card, which now read Emma Mitchell, patient advocate and safety consultant. "Call me," I said. "Let's make sure your brother doesn't make the same mistakes." Marcus was released after 14 months, his sentence reduced for good behavior. He tried to contact me through various family members, claiming he'd found God and wanted to make amends. I sent him a single message: real amends start with real accountability. When you're ready to admit what you did, not just what you got caught doing, we can talk. I haven't heard from him since. My parents eventually sold their house to pay the restitution costs. They still believe I was too harsh, that family should handle things privately, but they've stopped trying to force a reconciliation. Today, I work with certification boards and gym safety organizations, sharing my story and helping create stronger regulations for personal trainers. My walk still isn't perfect. Some nerve damage will never fully heal, but I'm stronger now than I ever was under Marcus' training. Yesterday, I received a letter from one of the other victims. She finally completed her physical therapy and was starting law school, specializing in fitness industry regulation. Your courage to speak up changed my life, she wrote. You showed me that sometimes the strongest thing we can do is stand up to family. Standing at my window, watching the sunset, I touched the scar on my back, a permanent reminder of trusting the wrong person. But it's also a reminder of my strength, my resilience, and the power of speaking truth, even when it hurts. Sometimes family isn't who we should trust the most. Sometimes the real healing begins when we stop protecting those who hurt us and start protecting ourselves. And that's a lesson worth all the pain it took to learn it.